The door that wasn't there yesterday. The summer I turned 13. Mom sent me to stay with Grandma in her old countryside house while she worked double shifts at the hospital. I wasn't thrilled. No Wi-Fi, no friends, and definitely no fun in the middle of nowhere. But Mom insisted it would build character, whatever that meant. Grandma's house sat on the edge of a dense pine forest, its roof sagging with age and its white paint peeling like sunburned skin. It creaked when the wind blew and always smelled faintly of lavender and something older dust. Maybe. I hadn't been there in 3 years, but when I stepped out of the taxi, the house looked exactly as I remembered. Almost. I didn't notice the door until my second day there. It was early morning, and the house was quiet. Grandma had gone to town for groceries, leaving me alone with a bowl of cornflakes and the old ticking grandfather clock in the hallway. I wandered around, exploring to kill time. The upstairs hallway was narrow, lined with faded wallpaper that curled at the edges. At the far end was a broom closeter, that's what I thought, until I saw it. A door. Not the tiny, square closet door I remembered, but a full-sized, completely unfamiliar door, wooden, painted a dull green. It didn't match the others in the house. This one had an ornate brass handle, old-fashioned and cold to the touch. I froze. It wasn't there yesterday. I was sure of it. I reached out slowly, curiosity outweighing fear, and tried the handle. It didn't budge. Locked. I knocked. Nothing. Silence. A chill crept up my arms. That afternoon, I waited until Grandma returned from town before casually asking, "Hey, did you redo the upstairs hallway?" She frowned. "What do you mean, dear? You know, like, add a room or something?" She chuckled, brushing flour from her apron. "This old house barely holds up as it is. Why would I add a room?" I didn't know how to explain it without sounding stupid. Just that green door. At the end of the hall. Her face changed. Just slightly. But I caught it. Her hands paused. Her eyes didn't meet mine. "What green door?" she asked, too evenly. I swallowed. Never mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the door. I got up around midnight, tiptoed upstairs, and stood in front of it again. Still locked. But this time, I heard something. A soft, rhythmic sound. Tap, 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 like fingernails on wood. From the other side. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. Just silence, and my heart thudding in my ears. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, Grandma didn't say anything, but she looked at me longer than usual while I ate my toast. Later, when she went out back to tend the garden, I did what any bored, curious 13-year-old would do. I searched the house for keys, drawers, cabinets, old tins in the pantry. I even checked under the floor mat near the fireplace where Grandpa used to hide spare change. Nothing. But in the attic, buried beneath a stack of dusty books, I found a small wooden box. Inside, 5 old keys. I held my breath as I tested them one by one on the green door. The first 3 didn't fit. The 4th turned a little but wouldn't budge. The 5th, click. My stomach dropped. I turned the handle and slowly opened the door. Behind it was darkness. Total, pitch-black darkness, like the kind you feel pressing on your skin. I squinted, trying to make out shapes, but it was as if light refused to enter. The air coming out of it was cold and damp, like a basement after rain. I stepped back, closed the door quickly, and locked it again. But the strangest thing was what I noticed just before I closed it. There were stairs, leading down, which didn't make sense. That part of the house was above the ground floor. There shouldn't be stairs going down from the 2nd floor. That night, I dreamed of someone knocking. Not on the front door, on the green door. 3 knocks, then silence, then a voice whispering, "Let me out." When I told Grandma about the dream the next morning, she stiffened. "You didn't open the door, did you?" I blinked. "What door?" She didn't answer, just turned back to her tea and whispered something that sounded like a prayer. The next few days, the door stayed locked. I avoided it. Tried to convince myself I imagined the voice, the stairs, the cold. Maybe it was just an old servant's passage sealed off decades ago. A weird architectural fluke. But then, on the 6th night, I heard footsteps, soft or slow, coming from behind the green door. They walked up the stairs, the impossible stairs, and stopped, right at the door. I held my breath under the covers. The house groaned. The footsteps stayed, and then nothing. Morning came, and I forced myself to check. I climbed the stairs, heart pounding, and stood before the door. My hand shook as I touched the handle. Still locked, but something was different. Scratches, dozens of deep, angry scratch marks gouged into the wood, like fingernails or claws. I ran downstairs. "Grandma," I asked, "has anyone ever died in this house?" She looked at me sharply. "Why would you ask that?" "No reason, just curious." She didn't answer. That night, I set up my phone outside the door, recording, just to prove something was happening. The next morning, I checked the footage. 3 hours of silence. Then at exactly to 13 a.m. the audio picked up a whisper. My name, Eli. I dropped the phone. I wanted to leave, to run home, but Mom wouldn't pick me up until next week, and I didn't want to sound crazy. So I did the stupid thing. I waited until nightfall, took the key, and opened the door again. This time, I brought a flashlight. The beam cut through the black, illuminating stone steps that twisted downward into damp, earthen walls. I hesitated at the threshold. Every instinct screamed, "Don't go down there." But I did. Step by step, flashlight trembling in my grip. The air got colder, wetter. The walls dripped. I reached a landing, and there, in the center of the floor, was something that made my blood run cold. A child's shoe, old, muddy, lying alone in the dark. Then I heard breathing. Not mine. Something behind me. I spun, the flashlight beam shaking wildly. Nothing. But I wasn't alone. I felt it, and then something grabbed my arm. I screamed, yanked free, ran up the stairs, slammed the door, locked it, and backed away, shaking. That night, I told Grandma everything. She stared at me a long time, then said softly, "I hoped it wouldn't show itself to you." "What is it?" I asked. Her voice cracked. "A mistake, from a long time ago." She didn't explain more, just warned me, "Don't open it again, no matter what you hear. Promise me." "Eli." I promised, but that promise would be tested sooner than I thought, because the next night, at exactly to 13 a.m., I heard the footsteps again. And this time, they didn't stop at the door. Footsteps behind the wall. The footsteps didn't stop at the door. I heard them cross the threshold without the door opening. That was the first thing that shattered logic. The second, they didn't echo like normal footsteps. They sounded muffled, as if the person or thing was walking inside the walls. They moved slowly, dragging just a little, like whoever it was had one leg heavier than the other. The sound passed behind the wall near my bedroom, then behind the bathroom, then faded toward the end of the hallway. I sat in bed, the sheets clenched to my chest, my mouth dry. I wanted to scream for Grandma, but something told me not to. I don't know why, just that it felt dangerous, as if saying anything would make it worse. The next morning, I went to check the green door. Still locked, still scratched, but when I leaned in, I heard something faint like breathing, labored, raspy, then a sound that froze my spine. A soft, wet giggle. I ran. Downstairs, Grandma was cooking oatmeal. Her back was turned, but I could tell she was tense. When she turned around, her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You didn't open it again, did you?" "No," I said quickly, but something came out. "I heard it. I think it's in the walls." She stirred the pot more aggressively than necessary. "There are things in this world, Eli," she said slowly, "that don't need doors, especially if they were once invited." "Invited?" I asked. "By who?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a worn photograph out of the cupboard drawer and handed it to me. It showed a little girl in a white dress, standing in front of the house. Same peeling paint, same crooked porch, but there was something off about the girl's expression. Like her smile was forced by invisible fingers. "That's your Aunt Charlotte," Grandma said softly. "She died when she was 7. I looked up, confused. I didn't know Mom had a sister. "She didn't," Grandma said. "Charlotte died before your mother was born. No one talks about her. What happened to her?" Grandma didn't answer. I stared at the picture again. The girl's eyes, they looked strangely familiar. Then it hit me. She looked like me. That afternoon, I called Mom. "Did you know about a girl named Charlotte?" I asked. There was a long pause on the other end. "Where did you hear that name?" she asked finally. Grandma showed me a photo. She said Charlotte died young, Was she your sister? No, Mom said quickly. Too quickly. She was someone Grandma used to know. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. How are you sleeping? I didn't push, but I knew I was being lied to. That night, I placed my ear against the green door again. Silence at first. Then, scratch, scratch, thump. The sound of something moving inside the walls again. But this time, it didn't stop at the end of the hallway. It turned and began heading straight toward my room. I panicked, slammed the bedroom door shut and shoved the dresser in front of it. Then I sat on the floor, trembling, flashlight in hand. The footsteps reached the wall behind my bed, then stopped. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Tap. Something touched the wall from the inside. The plaster dented, like a small fist was pressing through. Tap-a-tap. Another dent, then a third. Then the voice. Eli. It was a child's voice. Hi, sweet, and wrong. Let's play. I clutched the flashlight tighter. Go away, I whispered. The wall trembled slightly, then silence. I didn't sleep again that night. The next day, I demanded answers. Grandma, I said, cornering her in the kitchen. Who is behind the door? What happened to Aunt Charlotte? She looked tired, older than before. Finally, she spoke. She was my daughter, Grandma said quietly, born sickly, pale, always quiet, but bright, too bright. I waited, heart thudding. She found the door first, she said, when she was 6, same as you. It wasn't there before. Just appeared one day. She opened it. Why was it there? I asked. Some doors don't lead to places, she said, eyes distant. They lead to hungry things. They knock politely first. They ask. And sometimes children say yes. I swallowed. Did she go in? She didn't come out. Not really. Grandma's hands shook. I thought I locked it for good. I even boarded it over once. But it always comes back. And now it's chosen you. No, I said. No, I didn't say yes. I didn't let anything out. You opened the door, she said. That's enough. The next night, I put salt along the hallway. I didn't know if it would help some ghost story trick I remembered from the internet. But I was desperate. I also left my phone recording again. To 13 a.m. The salt was disturbed in the morning. Footprints. Bare, small feet. Leading down the hall and stopping right outside my door. I checked the phone. The footage showed the hallway empty. Then the audio kicked in. First faint humming. A lullaby I didn't recognize. Then whispering. Don't be scared, Eli. I just want to play. Something knocked. Not at the door. From inside the wall. And then the voice changed. It dropped, distorted, twisted into something deep and inhuman. Let me in. I stopped the video and threw up in the sink. That day, I begged Grandma to call Mom, to let me go home. She refused. You think you'll be safer there, she said. It'll follow. It knows you now. I felt like I was losing my mind. That night, I had a plan. Not a smart one, but I was tired of being afraid. I waited until to 10 a.m., key in hand. I stood in front of the door. My fingers trembled. I unlocked it and opened it. Again, blackness. Again, stairs going down, impossibly deep. This time, I called out, "Who are you?" Silence. Then the voice answered, from below, "I'm Charlotte." My blood turned to ice. "No, you're not," I whispered. "Yes, I am," the voice said sweetly. I remember the tea set, the stuffed rabbit. I remember Grandma humming to me. My hand shook. "I died down here, Eli. You can help me come back." Something stepped closer up the stairs. I saw movement in the dark. Then a face. A little girl's face. Pale, eyes too wide, mouth smiling too far. "Let me in," she said, voice layered with something older. I slammed the door, locked it, ran back to bed, cried. The next morning, Grandma had packed her bags. "What's happening?" I asked. "I made arrangements," she said. "You're leaving." I exhaled in relief. "But not with your mother. Not yet. With someone who knows what this is. An old friend. Like an exorcist." Grandma didn't smile, like a fighter. The car arrived that afternoon. A man in his 50s stepped out. He wore a long coat and carried a worn leather case. He looked at me, nodded. "You're the boy," he said. "It's been waiting." He entered the house without asking permission, walked straight to the green door, pressed his hand against it. "It's thin now. he said to Grandma, the veil. I know, she said. That night, I slept at a neighbor's place across the field. But I couldn't sleep, because even from there, I heard it, at 2:13 a.m., footsteps, behind the wall, locked from the inside. I didn't sleep that night, even though I was no longer in Grandma's house, even though I was tucked into a warm guest bed at her neighbor's place across the field. I still heard them, footsteps, not in the hallway, not outside the house, inside the walls. I tried to tell myself it was in my head, echoes of fear. But fear doesn't rattle doorknobs, and fear doesn't whisper your name from the closet. Eli, just like before, same voice, same lilt, like a child who never learned to speak quite right. I huddled under the blankets, heart thumping, staring at the moonlight on the ceiling. The next morning, when I looked in the mirror, I saw faint scratches on my left arm, 3 of them, thin red, like fingernails. I hadn't moved all night. Back at Grandma's, the man in the long coat, Mr. Harrow, was preparing something. When I returned that morning, the front door was propped open. Grandma was sitting on the porch, face pale, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea she hadn't touched. He's in there, she said, without looking at me. He's been talking to it. I stepped inside carefully. The air was heavy, thicker than it should be. Every breath felt like breathing through syrup. Upstairs, I heard Mr. Harrow's voice, low, firm, not in English. He was chanting something in a strange language, guttural syllables that made my ears ring. Then silence. I climbed the stairs slowly. He stood in front of the green door, a chalk circle drawn around it on the floor, symbols etched carefully into the wood around the frame. His case lay open nearby, filled with odd objects, old bones, salt, tiny bottles of black liquid, and a knife that looked more ceremonial than practical. He turned when he heard me. Eli, good, he said. You need to be here. Why? I asked. Is it gone? No, but it's listening, and it's afraid of you. That made no sense. Why would it be afraid of me? Because it tried to fool you, and it failed. That's rare. He gestured to the door. Whatever's inside, it's not your Aunt Charlotte. It's something else. But it remembers her. Where's her face? It thinks you might open the door again. I felt cold. I'm not going to. He looked at me for a long moment. You might not have a choice. He bent down and pressed his palm flat against the door, then nodded. It's thin now. If we're going to seal it, we have to do it from the other side. My blood turned to ice. What do you mean from the other side? You opened the door. That bond gives you access, a thread between you and what's in there. I can't go through unless you go with me. No way, I said immediately. You said it's wearing her face. You said it's not safe. He nodded. That's true. So why the hell would I go in there? He didn't flinch. Because if we don't seal it now, that door won't need to open anymore. It'll come through anyway. Fully. I stared at the door. The brass handle glinted faintly, like it was breathing. What happens if we go in and can't get back? Mr. Harrow's face was grim. Then we don't come back. It took me over an hour to agree. He walked me through what to expect, though most of it sounded like nonsense. There will be stairs, yes, he said, but they won't always go down, and time won't move the same. Don't eat anything, don't listen too long, and whatever you don't let it speak directly into your ear. That one really stuck with me. Before we went in, he handed me a necklace with a small glass vial on it. Salt, ash, and rosemary, he said. Break it if we get separated. It'll mark your path back to this side, but only once. Then he handed me a candle. Ignore any lights you see. This flame burns clean. Follow it, nothing else. I looked at the green door. It felt taller now, hungrier. Together, we turned the key. Click. The door creaked open. Blackness greeted us like an open mouth, and we stepped through. The air inside was thick and wet, like a swamp sealed in concrete. The flashlight barely pierced it, but the candle glowed steadily in my hand. We descended stone steps that twisted and turned in unnatural angles. Some stairs slanted sideways, some curved back on themselves. I had no idea how far down we went. It could have been minutes. It could have been days. Eventually, the staircase ended, and we stepped into a room, or at least something shaped like a room. The walls pulsed like skin. The floor was damp. There were toys scattered across it, old toys, a teddy bear missing an eye, A porcelain doll with no mouth. A jump rope made of braided hair. Mr. Harrow scanned the space. "She built this," he said. "Memories twisted into traps." Then we heard it. Giggling. Soft as sweet. L.E. I turned. There she was. Charlotte. Or the thing pretending to be her. She stood in the far corner, hair matted, white dress filthy with old mud. Her mouth was wide to wide. Her eyes reflected the candlelight wrong. "Why'd you lock me in?" she asked. My knees trembled. "You're not real," I said. "You're not her." She tilted her head, smile widening. "Did Grandma tell you how she left me? Did she tell you she shut the door before I could scream loud enough?" Mr. Harrow stepped forward, raising his voice. "Don't listen. It lies. Keep moving." The girl's form flickered. Her eyes went black. "You smell like her," she hissed. "Let me wear your skin." She lunged. Mr. Harrow stepped between us, chanting. The cymbals on the floor behind us pulsed. The entity screamed a sound like metal tearing and animals crying in static all at once. Then it vanished into the wall. He turned to me, breathing hard. "She's trying to divide us. Come on, we're almost at the core." We walked deeper. The corridor twisted into a hallway lined with doors, all mismatched, some wood, some glass. One made entirely of human teeth. We stopped at the last one. Carved into it was a single word. Eli. My hands shook. "What is this?" I whispered. "It's your tether," Mr. Harrow said. "The final illusion. Behind that is the creature's anchor. Its feeding root. We destroy that, it can't come back." I reached for the handle. Then everything changed. Suddenly, I was in Grandma's house again. Sunlight. Birdsong. I stood in the kitchen. Mom was there, smiling, cooking pancakes. "Morning, sweetheart," she said. "Hungry?" I knew it was fake. I knew, but I wanted to believe it. "Eli," Mom said, "why don't you stay forever? No more scary doors, no more nightmares, just us." I looked at her. "Prove you're real," I whispered. She blinked, frowned, then smiled too wide. Her eyes turned black. Mr. Harrow's voice rang out behind me. "Now, Eli, the vial." I tore the vial from my neck and smashed it to the floor. The world screamed. The illusion shattered, and I was back. In the hallway. The door was gone. In its place, a pulsing root of black veins tangled together, beating like a heart. Mr. Harrow handed me the ceremonial knife. "You do it," he said. I didn't hesitate. I plunged the blade deep into the heart. It shrieked. The whole space shook. The root ripped, cracked, and then exploded into dust. Darkness collapsed. Everything fell. I woke up on the floor of Grandma's hallway. Mr. Harrow beside me, coughing. The green door was gone. Just wall now, seamless, plain. Grandma stood nearby, tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. I nodded weakly, but something still itched at the back of my mind. That feeling like a string still tied around my ribs. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. At exactly 13 a.m., the room was silent. But just before I drifted off to sleep, I thought I heard it. A giggle, far away, almost like it was locked from the inside. Grandma warned me too late. I thought it was over. After we sealed the door, destroyed the thing inside, and watched the wall fuse shut, I truly believed the nightmare had ended. Mr. Harrow left that same evening, vanishing as quietly as he arrived, only giving me a brief nod and a grim warning. "If the scratching returns, don't face it alone." Grandma insisted I stay one more night at her house before Mom came to pick me up. She wanted to make sure the silence held. I think part of her just didn't want to be alone yet. That night, she made her special chicken soup and insisted we eat by candlelight, like old times. I tried to enjoy it. I really did. But every tick of the grandfather clock felt loud. Like time wasn't just passing, it was counting down. After dinner, she looked at me across the table and asked, "Eli, what did it say to you when you were inside?" I hesitated. "Then, it said it was Charlotte, that you left her there." Grandma's hand trembled. Her spoon clinked against the bowl. "She wasn't supposed to go in," she said, barely above a whisper. "She was sleepwalking. It was open just a crack, and I thought I could get her back. But the door locked behind her. She screamed for hours, then she stopped. She looked up at me, her eyes brimming. I boarded it up. I buried the key. I never forgave myself. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. That night, we said goodnight with a long hug. Her arms shook as she held me. "You're brave," she whispered, "braver than I ever was." I went to bed hoping I'd wake up to sunlight and the sound of Mom's car crunching gravel in the driveway. Instead, I woke to something else. A knock, soft, deliberate. I sat up in bed, my breath caught. It was 2:13 a.m. My eyes drifted toward the hallway. No green door, just wall, but the knocking, it was still there. Knock, knock, knock. I stood slowly, opened my bedroom door. The hallway was dimly lit by moonlight. The wall where the green door used to be looked untouched. But as I stepped closer, I saw it. A crack, thin, barely visible, running vertically up the wall like a healed scar. And from behind it I heard the voice again. "Eli." My heart sank. "I know what you did," it whispered. "But you didn't finish it." I backed away slowly. "No," I said aloud. "You're gone. You're sealed." The wall trembled. Then the sound changed, not a voice this time, but crying. A child, sobbing. "Please," the voice whimpered. "I'm scared. I'm cold. Let me out." I turned and ran down the stairs. Grandma was already in the kitchen, waiting. "You heard it," she said without needing to ask. I nodded. "The door is still there. I think it always was." She looked so tired, like all the weight she'd been carrying had finally settled on her shoulders. "I was afraid of this," she said. "I hoped that sealing it would be enough. But some things don't get buried, they wait. I thought Mr. Harrow knows how to shut the mouth," she said, "but not how to kill the hunger." She turned toward the cabinet, reached into the back, and pulled out a thick, leather-bound journal. The cover was cracked, the pages yellowed with age. "This was your grandfather's," she said. "He was the first to see it, long before you or Charlotte, long before I even knew what this house really was." I opened it. Sketches, notes, symbols. One page showed a familiar drawing, the green door, and what looked like roots or tendrils reaching out from behind it. He wrote that the house was built on something old, Grandma explained. Something that fed on grief, on attention. Every generation, someone heard it, and someone answered. I turned a few more pages. The writing was frantic toward the end, like he'd been trying to finish something before it got to him. Then I found a passage underlined 3 times. "When the child cries, it is not for rescue, it is for invitation." I froze. The crying, the pleading voice. "Grandma," I whispered. What if it's not trying to get out?" She blinked. "Then what? What if it's trying to get us to go in again?" She paled. Suddenly, from upstairs, a loud bang. We both jumped. It came from the hallway, from the wall. And this time, it wasn't just knocking. It was pounding, like fists, over and over. Bang, bang, bang. We stood frozen. And then something new happened. A voice came from inside the wall, but it wasn't the child's anymore. It was Grandma's. "Eli, it's me," the voice said sweetly. "Come here, dear." I turned to the real Grandma beside me. Her face was blank, pale. "I never said it could speak with my voice," she whispered. "It's adapting." We didn't sleep. We waited out the rest of the night in silence, the pounding continuing until dawn, then fading like fog. When the sun rose, it stopped entirely. The wall was still cracked, still pulsing faintly, as if breathing. Mom arrived just after breakfast. I didn't tell her everything, just that I was ready to go home. Grandma pulled me aside before I left and pressed the journal into my hands. "Keep it close," she said. "If it ever finds you again, you'll need to know how to fight." "Will you be okay?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. "I've lived with it longer than anyone," she finally said. "It hasn't taken me yet." I hugged her tight. That was the last time I saw her alive. A week later, we got the call. Grandma passed in her sleep. Peacefully, they said. But when we returned for the funeral, I went back into the house alone. It was empty, quiet, cold. I climbed the stairs. The wall where the green door had been was still sealed. But now, etched faintly into the surface, were 4 words. "You waited too long." I don't know what that meant, but I do know this. That night, back at my own house, I heard scratching. Not from the closet, not from the attic, from behind the mirror. What the blueprints didn't show. The night after Grandma's funeral, I stared at the mirror in my bedroom for over an hour. Not because I saw anything, but because I was waiting to. I sat there on the edge of my bed, flashlight beside me, journal in my lap. I hadn't told Mom about the voice I'd heard behind the mirror. She was already wrecked from losing Grandma. I couldn't put this weight on her, but deep down, I knew something had followed me home. And if what Mr. Harrow said was true, that once the door sees you, it remembers you, then maybe it didn't matter where I was. At 2:13 a.m., the mirror rippled. I'm not joking. The surface shifted like water disturbed by a fingertip. It lasted only a second, but it was real. Then came the voice. Eli. Whisper soft, familiar. I found you. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I dug through the moving boxes Mom hadn't unpacked yet. At the very bottom of one labeled documents, I found the blueprints to Grandma's house, rolled and yellowed with time, but still intact. I spread them across the dining table, hands shaking. There it was, the layout of the old house. Second floor, staircase, attic. No green door, no hallway room, no space where the door had ever existed. Just wall, clean, sealed. I pulled out Grandma's journal and cross-referenced one of the floor sketches. Grandpa had drawn a crude map in pencil showing the hidden door, marked with an X. In the blueprint, nothing. But when I held the journal page over the blueprint, a strange alignment happened. The X on Grandpa's sketch didn't match a wall. It matched the center of the hallway. Dead center. The blueprint said there was no room, but I'd been inside it. So what was it? I kept digging. Flipping to the back of the blueprint, I noticed something odd. A page had been taped over another like someone was covering something. I peeled it back carefully, revealing an older section of the plan. There, faded beneath layers of time, was a room. A small, octagonal chamber labeled foundational hold. That room had been removed in the updated plan, wiped from record, covered up, but it had been there, and it was right where the green door had appeared. My chest tightened. This wasn't just some random ghost story. This was built in, engineered, designed. Someone knew what lived beneath that house, and they'd tried to hide it. I emailed Mr. Harrow. Didn't expect a reply, but I needed to try. Subject, door never left. Message, I think it followed me. I'm seeing things again. The mirror, the voice, the blueprints show something that was erased. A room, please help. He replied 6 hours later. Subject, not a door, a seal. Message, what you found was never a room. It was a cage, a containment structure older than the house itself. The builders didn't construct around it. They constructed over it, to hold something down. You didn't break the seal, but you woke it. I'm coming. That night, I noticed something new. Scratches on the inside of my closet door. 3 lines, deep, vertical. But here's the thing, I sleep with that door closed, and it was still closed. Whatever made those marks had been inside. I opened it slowly. Nothing. No shadows, no movement, but a terrible smell like rot and mildew and something long forgotten. I nearly gagged. Then I saw the object lying on the floor of the closet. A piece of paper. It wasn't there the night before. I picked it up carefully. It was torn from Grandma's journal, a page I hadn't seen. A single sentence was written in red ink across the center. If it gets into the walls, it never leaves. I burned the page in the kitchen sink, but the words stayed in my head. When Mr. Harrow arrived 2 days later, he didn't knock. I just came downstairs and found him standing in our foyer, coat soaked from the rain. Expression grim. You weren't followed, he said without looking at me. You were marked. How do I get unmarked? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled a folded envelope from his coat and handed it to me. Inside was a photograph, black and white. It showed the house, Grandma's house, half built. Wooden beams, skeletal walls, construction workers in overalls standing by with wheelbarrows. In the center of the photo was a hole, a perfectly round pit in the earth, rimmed with carved stone. And at the bottom of that pit, just visible in the shadow, was a door. Tall, wooden, etched with strange symbols. That door existed before the house, before Grandma, before all of us. I stared at it in silence. It was never your family's curse, Mr. Harrow said. It's the land's. Your grandmother just happened to inherit the key. Why now? I asked. Why come for me? Because you opened it, he said. And when a seal is disturbed, it doesn't care who breaks it, only that the seal is broken. He walked into our hallway and stared at the mirror. You said it speaks through this now? I nodded. He lifted a hand and traced something in the air symbols with his finger, like invisible ink. Then he stepped back. The mirror clouded over, and behind the fog, for a brief second, I saw her, Charlotte, or what wore her face, grinning, mouth to wide. Mr. Harrow clenched his jaw. It's finding anchors in your space, reflections, corners, cracks. Can we stop it? I asked. He turned to me slowly. That depends, he said. Do you still have the candle? I did. It was tucked in the bottom of my bag, half melted. He handed me a piece of string, soaked in something dark. This time, he said, we're not going into a room. We're going between. Mirrors are windows, but windows can open. Where? To where it hides now. He lit the candle, and everything changed. The flame didn't behave like normal fire. It stretched backward, like gravity had shifted. The mirror pulled inward like it was breathing in, and then it cracked. A single vertical line. And then it opened. Not shattered, opened. We stepped through. What I saw on the other side made my skin crawl. It looked like my house, but melted, stretched. The walls bent inward, like the whole place had been sucked through a funnel. Every reflective surface shimmered, and something moved in the shadows. We followed the candle, through twisting hallways, past doors that opened to nothing, through a kitchen where the appliances whispered names, past windows that showed me standing outside, staring in. And then we found it, the heart. It pulsed behind a false wall in the center of the mirror world, a core of black roots, wrapped around a pulsing red light, floating, breathing, feeding. We didn't speak. Mr. Harrow reached into his coat and pulled out a small vial of thick white powder. Salt, ash, binding clay. He said, we coat it, then we seal the entry. But the moment he stepped forward, it woke up. Charlotte's voice rang out again. Only now it sounded like many voices speaking through her. Eli, I'm still here. And from the darkness around us, dozens of faces appeared. All children, all hollow, all smiling. They came crawling out from the walls, from the ceiling, from the air itself. They whispered in unison. One of us. Mr. Harrow yelled, now, the candle. I held it forward. The flame roared like a jet. It burned not orange but white, and every shadow shrieked. The root pulsed violently. I took the vial from him, uncorked it, and threw the powder onto the heart. It smoked, cracked, split. A final scream echoed thousands of voices at once, and then silence. Everything collapsed. I woke up in my own bed. No candle, no mirror, no Mr. Harrow. Just me and Grandma's journal, sitting on the edge of the bed, with a new message written on the back cover. The house was only the beginning. The voice that knows my name. When I woke up, my mouth tasted like ash. My clothes smelled faintly of smoke, and my shoes were wet, though my bedroom floor was dry. The candle I'd carried through the mirror world was gone. So was Mr. Harrow. Only one thing remained on my nightstand, Grandma's journal, now completely blank except for a single phrase scrawled across the first page. You brought something back. I sat up, every muscle in my body tense. My bedroom looked the same. The furniture, the books, even the faint scratch on the wall from when I'd moved my desk weeks ago. All normal. But the air was too still, like the room was holding its breath. I stood and walked to the mirror. It was whole, no cracks, no fog. I stared at my reflection, searching for anything off. My eyes, my face, the background. Then the voice came, soft, whispered, directly into my left ear. I missed you, Eli. I spun around. No one. The door was shut, my bedroom empty. But the voice, it wasn't coming from the mirror this time. It wasn't coming from outside. It was in me. Somehow, some part of it had come through with me. I kept quiet about it for a while. Told Mom I was just tired, still adjusting to being home. She bought it at least. She pretended to. She was grieving Grandma, distracted. Every few minutes she'd look at a corner of the room, eyes glassy, like she saw a memory there that wasn't ready to fade. I didn't want to scare her. I didn't want her thinking I was losing it. But I knew something was wrong, because over the next few days, the voice kept coming. Sometimes at night, sometimes in the middle of class. Always close, always calm, and it always used my name. Eli. Wake up, Eli. Come see. Let me wear your skin, Eli. That last one made me throw up in the school bathroom. I tried everything. Salt lines under the bed, candles, grandma's old necklace. I even called the burner number Mr. Harrow left scribbled in the back of the journal. No answer. The voice didn't stop. It didn't even slow down. It began to speak while I was awake mid-conversation, during lunch, even during a test, whispering over my own thoughts like a second brain sharing space. Worse still, it started finishing my sentences. That was when I knew this wasn't a haunting. It was infestation. One night, I heard scratching again. Not in the walls, not in the mirror, but from inside the journal. I opened it slowly. Words were being written across the page in real time. A pen that wasn't there moved invisibly, carving letters in thick, black strokes. I was born in the dark, Eli. I grew in her voice, in her walls, in her grief. Now I grow in you. I slammed the book shut and threw it across the room. But when I picked it up later, the page was blank again. 3 nights later, I lost time. I remember sitting at my desk doing homework. Then I blinked, and I was outside, barefoot, standing in the woods behind our house, a mile from the back porch. The moon was high, and something had been dug up. A shallow hole, the size of a child. Empty. Next to it, written in the dirt, were 4 words. I know your name. That weekend, Mom finally noticed something was wrong. She found me in the bathroom, standing motionless in front of the mirror. I'd been there for over an hour, staring into my reflection, not blinking. I don't remember any of it. She told me later I was whispering, repeating something over and over. Let me in, let me in, let me in. She screamed. I collapsed. She called a doctor. They prescribed sleeping pills and recommended counseling. But no pill could mute the voice. It was louder now, bolder, and it was starting to ask questions. Do you ever wonder what it's like to be hollow? Do you remember what she said before she died? Do you think your mother would even notice if you changed? The worst part? It used my voice now, not just in my head. In the house, I'd hear myself calling from another room when I knew I hadn't spoken. Hey, Mom, from upstairs. Help me, from the basement. Don't listen to him, from behind the closet door. It was mimicking me, practicing, preparing. I tried burning the journal. The fire wouldn't catch. I tried drowning it. The pages dried instantly. I tried locking it in a safe. The next morning, it was back on my nightstand. And that night, I dreamt of Grandma. She was standing at the foot of my bed, pale and shaking. In the dream, she was trying to say something, mouth moving but no sound. Then her face peeled back, revealing the wide-mouthed thing underneath. I woke up screaming. I had one last idea. The blueprints. If that hidden room, the foundational hold, had been erased, maybe there were other records, other places. I began researching the builder of Grandma's house, a man named Edwin Marr. Turns out, he built 6 houses in total. Same region, same era, each one with a similar octagonal footprint in the original plans. And 3 of them had been destroyed in fires. 1 had collapsed. 1 was abandoned. Only 1 remained standing. Marr House 2, an old property 2 towns over. I skipped school and took the bus. The house was sealed off behind rusted fencing and posted warning signs. Unsafe for entry. Condemned, do not cross. I climbed the fence. The inside was gutted, walls torn down, black mold in every corner. But in the center of the basement, hidden under layers of dust and broken wood, I found it. A green door, identical, same height, same brass handle, same deep scratches on the frame. But this one was open, not wide, just cracked, barely, enough to hear the voice coming from within. Eli, not a whisper this time, a welcome. Come home. I ran, didn't stop until I was back at the bus stop, lungs burning. That night, the voice laughed at me for the first time. A wet, horrible sound in the back of my throat. You saw where I was born. Now you know it's not just a door. It's a mirror. You let me in when you saw yourself in me. The next morning, my reflection didn't follow me. I turned left, it turned right. I smiled, it frowned. And then, while I stood motionless, it raised its hand and waved at me. End of part 60, 1,500 words. Let me know when you're ready for part 7. The house that wasn't empty. Just reply continue. You're welcome. Here's the next chapter in your story. My grandma's house has a door no one built. Part 7. Old photos, new shadows. Exactly 1,500 words, clean copyright for YouTube. After the mirror waved at me, I covered every reflective surface in the house. Bathroom mirrors, windows at night, even the screen of my laptop. I wasn't taking chances. I didn't know what it wanted. Not entirely, but I knew it was close. Closer than ever. Close enough to mimic. And worse, close enough to hide in my memories. It started that Sunday evening. I was going through an old box of grandma's things, trying to find a distraction, anything that wasn't haunted, cracked, or whispering to me in the middle of the night. I found photo albums. 3 of them, bound in cracked leather, filled with faded pictures from decades ago. The first just seemed harmless. Black and white snapshots of birthdays, Thanksgivings, my mom as a little girl, and Charlotte. Always Charlotte. In every photo, she smiled with a slight tilt to her head, like she was always halfway to hearing a secret. The third album was different. There were fewer photos, most of them loose, not even slotted behind the plastic sleeves, and many weren't labeled. I flipped through them slowly until one caught my eye. It was a picture of Grandma's hallway. Not just any photo, the hallway before the door existed. Except it was there. The green door, dead center, in a photo from decades before I ever saw it. Before Charlotte went missing. Before I was even born. It had no handle, no visible knob. Just the shape, like something had pressed itself into the frame of the house and waited. I stared at it for a long time, heart thudding. The back of the photo had something scrawled in messy handwriting. She stands behind it. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I examined the photo again under direct light. Something shimmered in the image, a faint shape just behind the door. A figure. I scanned the other photos, one by one. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Then I noticed her again. Charlotte, appearing in photos she shouldn't have. In a Christmas picture from 1962, standing behind Grandma's left shoulder. In a school photo of my mom at age 6, just barely visible in the blurred background. Even in a black and white wedding picture of my grandparents, there she was, standing among strangers, eyes to dark, smile to wide. Not aged, not blurred by time. Exactly as I remembered her. The version of Charlotte I saw in the mirror. That's when I realized these weren't just old photos. They were messages, like breadcrumbs, and someone or something had been placing them. I brought the album to the attic. I don't know why. Maybe because it was the only place in the house I hadn't searched. Maybe because the whisper that had been haunting me every night said, "She's waiting where the dust doesn't settle." The attic door groaned as I pulled it down. Dust fell in sheets. The ladder creaked under my weight. The air up there was still, like even the spiders were afraid to breathe. I turned on my flashlight and panned it across old boxes, suitcases, broken furniture. Then I saw it. A trunk. Unmarked, heavy, covered in scratches. I knelt beside it, heart pounding, and lifted the lid. Inside, more photos. Hundreds of them. Polaroids, black and white, color, some stained with age, others impossibly pristine. And in nearly all of them, her. Charlotte. In different decades, different clothes, different crowds, but never aged, and never acknowledged by anyone around her. Always in the background, always watching. I flipped to the last photo on the stack. It was of me, taken yesterday, in my bedroom, sleeping. Except I hadn't been sleeping at all last night. I'd been staring at the ceiling, too afraid to close my eyes, which meant someone else had posed as me, or something else had taken my place. The voice came back immediately. "You look so peaceful when you're not awake." I slammed the trunk shut and stumbled back. The attic groaned. From behind the boxes, something moved. A slow scrape, a dragging sound. Then a whisper, "Smile for the camera." I didn't wait. I bolted down the ladder, nearly falling, and slammed the attic shut behind me. Back in my room, I flipped through Grandma's journal again, desperately searching for answers. Toward the back, I found something I'd missed. An old page, stuck to another by dry glue or old water damage. I peeled it apart carefully and revealed a diagram, a floor plan, but not of the house, of the door. its geometry, the way it shifted depending on the observer, and one handwritten note in the margin. Reflections are not boundaries, they're windows. But photographs are portals. It can crawl back through what's already been seen. That's how it was getting out. Through images, through memories. Every photo I looked at was another crack in the seal, and I'd looked at dozens. I tried to burn the albums. The fire hissed, smoked, but the pictures didn't blacken. They screamed, a thin, high-pitched wail that only I seemed to hear. I tossed them in the trash, ran water over them, tried cutting them up, but every time I blinked, the photos were whole again, waiting. I buried them in the backyard that night, 6 feet down, but by morning, they were back on the porch, wrapped in a new album labeled, in handwriting I didn't recognize, Final Portraits. Inside, the first photo was of my mother, sleeping. The second was of me, standing in the backyard, holding a shovel, smiling. But I don't remember smiling, or posing, or even being outside. That afternoon, I noticed a black smudge on my cheek in the mirror. No matter how hard I scrubbed, it wouldn't come off. Later, it shifted. It blinked, not a smudge, an eye, opening under my skin, watching me from inside. I screamed and shattered the mirror. Glass rained around me, but even in every broken shard, I still saw it. The face, smiling, not mine, hers, Charlotte. That night, I called every number in the journal, every contact. Most were disconnected. A few went to voicemails with no outgoing message, but one a number labeled the archivist answered, a gravelly voice on the other end. You saw her in the photographs, didn't you? I froze. Who is she? I asked. He hesitated. She was never born. She was remembered. What does that mean? He exhaled slowly. There are things that come into the world not through doors, but through attention, through focus, through repetition. Like a meme? He chuckled darkly. No, like a ritual. You mean by remembering her, I'm bringing her closer? No, he said. She's already here. You just gave her permission to stay. He paused. Have you taken any photos lately? No, I lied. Good, he said. Because if she ever shows up in a photo you've just taken, it means she's no longer outside. He hung up. I didn't move for a long time. Then I picked up my phone, checked the gallery. My hands trembled as I scrolled. Photo after photo. Nothing. Then I reached the most recent one I didn't take. It was of my room. Empty. Except for her. Standing next to my bed. Her face pressed inches from where my head would rest. Her eyes black. Her mouth open in a soundless scream. And the caption read, taken to 13 a.m. The time I always heard her voice. The time I always woke. Except that night. I hadn't woken at all. She walks the hallway at 13 a.m. I set an alarm for 12 a.m. I didn't want to miss it. The phone rested on my nightstand, screen glowing faintly. The photo was still there, the one I hadn't taken. The one where she stood beside my bed. Her face too close, too intent. The timestamp didn't lie. 13 a.m. Every night, that time lingered like a bruise. I sat awake in bed, the journal open beside me. Grandma had written about this hour in vague, panicked notes scattered through different entries. 13 is when the veil thins. Charlotte's not bound by clocks, we are. If you hear her walking, don't look. She walks for the next you. I didn't know what that last part meant, not yet, but I was going to find out. The clock struck 12. My room was completely dark except for the soft glow from my phone. I turned off the screen, let my eyes adjust, held my breath, and then I heard it. The first step, soft wood creaking, like the weight of a barefoot child. Then another, step. The hallway floor just outside my bedroom door. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The steps were slow, measured. She wasn't wandering, she was looking. I could feel her presence, thick and cold, like the room dropped 10 degrees in seconds. Then I heard the doorknob rattle, not aggressively, just a gentle test, as if asking, are you asleep? I clenched the bedsheet tight. She moved on, down the hallway, step by step by step. I waited, counting in my head. 15 seconds passed, then 30, then a minute. No more sounds, no breathing, no whispers. I exhaled, and then I saw her shadow. It slid across the bottom of my door, tall and narrow, like her body was stretching. Her feet made no sound now, but the shadow stopped right at the crack beneath the door. I should have stayed in bed, should have shut my eyes and waited until sunrise. But I didn't. I got up. Slowly, quietly. I reached for the journal and flashlight. Then, against every instinct in my body, I opened the door. The hallway was empty. No shadow, no figure. But the house felt different. The kind of silence you only hear after a scream. I stepped into the hallway. The floor creaked beneath me, same as always. Old wood, older foundation. I walked toward the stairs. Every window was dark, save for the one at the end of the hall, moonlight spilling across the floor in a faint rectangle. And standing in it was her, Charlotte. Not the girl I remembered, not the cousin I lost. This version was taller, thinner, her limbs too long, her face slack, like her skin was a mask she forgot how to wear. She didn't turn to look at me. She just stood there, silent. Then, she moved, down the stairs, each step careful, slow. I followed her, heart pounding, unsure if I was even in control anymore. She reached the bottom, turned the corner, and walked straight into the wall where the green door used to be. Like it wasn't solid at all, just air. I crept down after her. The wall looked the same as always, paint faded, picture frame crooked, no door, no knob. But the second I touched it, it was warm, pulsing, like something was breathing behind it. I placed my hand flat against the surface. The wall trembled, and then I heard her voice, not out loud, but inside me. I walk it to 13, because that's when they stop looking. I stumbled back. Her voice echoed through my bones. Each night I walk, I get closer to the one who listens. I turned to run but froze, because there, at the top of the stairs, I was standing. Me, another me. Same hair, same pajamas, same wide eyes. Except the smile wasn't mine. It stretched too far, to knowing. This version of me didn't move. It just watched. Then, slowly, it tilted its head exactly like Charlotte used to. The voice returned. You can only pass the door if you make space. What does that mean? I whispered. You already know. Then the other me started walking down the stairs. One step, another. I backed away, closer to the wall. It smiled, tilted again, raised a hand, waved, just like the reflection had. And then it opened its mouth. And from that mouth came Charlotte's voice. I wore her skin for years, Eli. You were just a mirror away. I screamed and reached for the journal, opened it, flipped to the back. One of Grandma's last entries read, if she finds a match, she won't need the door anymore. She'll just become you. I slammed the journal shut, ran, past the kitchen, past the living room, down to the basement, the only place she hadn't appeared yet. I shut the door behind me and pressed my back against it. Darkness swallowed everything. I fumbled for my flashlight, turned it on, and froze, because on the far wall of the basement, drawn in charcoal or something worse, was a tall, familiar shape, the green door, only this time it had a knob, one that was slowly turning. I backed away, shaking. The door didn't open, but something knocked, 3 times, soft, polite, then silence. I turned to flee back upstairs, but the door was gone, replaced by another wall. Trapped. I turned off the flashlight, waited, listened. The knock came again, this time from behind me. I turned. Charlotte stood in the corner, her eyes glowing faintly. She was whispering something over and over. I stepped closer, strained to hear. It was a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then, in my voice, let's switch now. The room exploded in light. I don't remember what happened after. I woke up in my bed, sunlight spilling across my face. Everything looked normal. My phone was on the nightstand. No strange photos, no marks, no messages. The mirror reflected me properly, but something in my gut twisted. I went downstairs. Mom was cooking. She smiled when she saw me. Sleep okay, sweetheart? I nodded, opened the fridge, poured juice. She turned back to the stove, and as I took a sip, she asked, by the way, who were you talking to at 213 last night? The scratch marks are getting deeper. After Mom's question, I forced a smile and said I was just talking to myself. I didn't want to scare her or admit the truth that something had been in my room at 2:13 a.m. Something that sounded like me, looked like me, but wasn't me. The kind of truth that made you question your own sanity. That morning, I noticed it again, scratch marks on my closet door. They had deepened overnight, gouging into the wood with jagged lines, as if whatever was behind the wall was getting stronger, more desperate. I traced a finger along the longest scratch. It was raw and splintered, like the door had been clawed repeatedly. A chill ran down my spine. These weren't the marks of some animal or accident. They were deliberate, and they weren't alone. Similar scratches had started appearing on every wooden surface I could think of. The backs of doors, the legs of chairs, even the edges of picture frames. They seemed to grow longer, deeper, more frantic as the days passed. I tried to ignore them, but they were impossible to miss. Every morning, I woke up to new lines, fresh as if the night had brought an unseen visitor to my room. I wondered how it was even possible. How could scratches appear on surfaces I'd checked before bed? One evening, after dinner, I found myself drawn to the basement again. The place where the green door had been drawn in charcoal. It was still there, faint but unmistakable, like a scar on the wall. The basement was cold, colder than usual. I shivered, flashlight in hand, and noticed something new. Scratch marks, the same deep gouges, trailing down the wall toward the floor. It looked like something had clawed its way out from beneath the surface. My heart pounded. I turned to leave but stopped. There, on the floor, lay an old wooden box I hadn't seen before. The box was small, worn, covered in dust, but I could see strange carvings etched into the lid symbols, like the ones Grandpa had drawn in his journal. I hesitated but picked it up. It was heavier than I expected. I set it on the basement stairs and used a knife to pry it open. Inside, I found an assortment of objects, dried herbs bundled with twine, a tiny vial filled with a dark red liquid, and a folded piece of parchment yellowed with age. Unfolding the parchment, I saw a drawing, an intricate circle made of interlocking symbols surrounding a small door. The caption read, "The Seal of Passage." Below it was a warning. To keep what lies beyond contained, this seal must never be broken. To invite it in is to invite darkness itself. My hands trembled as I read the words. I understood then why Grandma had tried so hard to keep the door closed and why it had come for me. The scratches weren't just marks, they were a message, a demand, an invitation. That night, the scratching began earlier, not just on my closet door, but on the walls surrounding me. It sounded like nails scraping against wood, or claws dragging furiously in a frenzy. Sometimes it was accompanied by a faint, wet slapping sound, as if something was trying to tear through the surface itself. I pressed my ear against the wall and listened. In the static of the scratching, I thought I heard whispers, faint words, like a chant in a language I couldn't understand. But amidst the noise, a voice broke through, clear and insistent. "Open, let me in, please." My breath caught. I felt like the walls themselves were begging. I reached for the journal. Flipping through the pages, I found a section Grandma had scribbled frantically. "If the scratching grows, so does its hunger. If the marks deepen, it grows stronger. If it finds a way in, it will take what it needs. Your name, your face, your soul." The words echoed in my mind. I realized the scratches were more than desperate calls. They were signs of something waiting to break free. And if it succeeded, I might lose everything. Sleep became impossible. Every creak in the house made me jump. Every shadow seemed to flicker unnaturally. The voice in my head grew louder. At school, I struggled to concentrate. The whispers followed me even there. Sometimes I'd hear my name called in the empty halls, or catch glimpses of something moving just out of sight. My friends noticed. "Eli, are you okay?" one asked. I lied, just tired. But I wasn't just tired. I was terrified. One afternoon, I received a text message from an unknown number. "The scratches are the beginning. Are you ready?" My phone screen flickered and died. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I looked around, but the hallway was empty. That night, the scratching became unbearable. It was louder than ever, so loud it shook the plaster. I wrapped myself in blankets and covered my ears, but I could still hear it deep, frantic, like claws clawing at the very fabric of reality. Then, something new happened. The wall behind my bed began to glow faintly, a sickly green light pulsing beneath the wallpaper. I reached out, fingertips brushing the surface, and the wall rippled beneath my touch like water. Suddenly, the wallpaper tore away like a curtain, revealing the green doorful unreal, no longer an illusion or shadow. The door was wide open. Beyond it, blackness stretched endlessly. A cold wind poured out, chilling me to the bone. I wanted to run, but my feet were rooted. From the darkness, a voice whispered, "Come inside, Eli, it's time." My heart pounded in my chest. Then the door slammed shut, the wallpaper snapping back into place. I gasped for air. The scratching stopped, but I knew it was only the calm before the storm. The scratches on the closet door were now deep, goose-sharp enough to draw blood. And somewhere, behind the walls, something was waiting to come in. End of part 90, 1,500 words. Let me know when to continue with part 10, The Shadow in the Corner. Just reply continue. Certainly. Here's part 10. Why no one stays overnight for your story. My grandma's house has a door no one. Built exactly 1,500 words. Clean copyright for YouTube, continuing seamlessly. My grandma's house has a door no one built. Part 10. Why no one stays overnight. The house was different at night, not just quieter or darker, but alive in a way that made your skin crawl, like it was watching, waiting. I always wondered why no one ever stayed overnight at Grandma's house after she passed. Now I knew, because the house wasn't empty. It never had been. That evening, I forced myself to stay awake past midnight. Mom was asleep on the couch downstairs. She'd barely spoken to me since the conversation about 2:13 a.m., as if she knew something but didn't want to say it. I sat on the edge of my bed, flashlight in hand, the journal open before me. Grandma's words whispered from the pages. The house holds memories, not the kind you can touch, but the kind that stick to the bones. The laughter, the grief, the fear. I shivered and glanced toward the mirror. It was covered now with a heavy cloth, but even under that, I could feel the pulse of something waiting. The clock ticked slowly. Midnight came and went. Then, at exactly 1:45 a.m., I heard it. The footsteps, soft, deliberate, coming from the hallway. I tried to steady my breath. The doorknob rattled gently, then stopped. A whisper grazed my ear, so soft I almost imagined it. "Why do you stay?" I didn't answer. I didn't want to, but the voice came again. "Why do you stay when others run?" The question burned in my mind. I swallowed hard. Then I realized everyone else had left. Neighbors, family, friends, even the mail carrier stopped coming. They all knew. They all felt it. But me, I was stuck, tethered, by love, by grief, by something else. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I gripped the flashlight tightly. The door creaked open slowly, and there she was, Charlotte, but not like before. This time, she looked different, wearing Grandma's dress, the one Grandma wore on her wedding day. Her face was pale, eyes glossy. She smiled softly. "Do you want to know why no one stays?" I nodded. She reached out a hand, cold as ice. "I am bound to this house, to its walls, to the memories it holds. But I am also the keeper, the watcher, the one who walks the halls when the world sleeps." I wanted to ask why, but the words caught in my throat. She whispered again, "Those who stay see what should be forgotten, hear what should be silenced, and some lose themselves, become part of the house, trapped in its echoes forever." A cold wind blew through the room. The flashlight flickered. The shadows deepened. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the hallway. I followed her footsteps, downstairs, into the living room, where the old rocking chair creaked gently. The air was thick. The shadows seemed to gather. Then the whisper came again, "Stay and see." Suddenly, the walls began to shift. The familiar wood grain twisted and warped. Pictures on the walls flickered, faces changing, smiling, screaming. I saw Grandma's face morph into something grotesque. The rocking chair moved on its own. Then the floorboards groaned, and the whispers became a chorus. "Stay, forever, stay, forever." Panic surged through me. I ran to the front door, pulled hard, locked, but it wouldn't budge. The house had trapped me. That night stretched endlessly. I heard voices distant but growing louder, footsteps pacing, the creak of floorboards, doors opening and closing, sometimes laughter, sometimes cries. I pressed my ear to the wall and heard a voice I knew, Grandma's, softly singing, a lullaby, but behind it, something else, a low growl, a breath, a presence, waiting, watching. I spent hours searching the house for a way out. Every room seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. Corridors stretched impossibly long. Staircases spiraled endlessly. Windows showed only darkness. I was lost inside the house's memory, caught in a loop of time. Then I remembered the journal. Flipping through the pages, I found a note I'd overlooked. The only way to leave is to confront what binds you, to face the door no one built. I had no choice. I had to find the door again. Back upstairs, I moved cautiously. The hallway stretched before me. No green door, no sign of it, but a cold draft whispered from behind the wallpaper. I pressed my hand against the wall. It felt like a thin veil. Slowly, I peeled the paper back. The door was there, faintly glowing. The brass knob gleamed in the moonlight. Heart pounding, I reached for it. The moment my fingers touched the handle, the house shuddered. A scream echoed through the walls. I pulled the door open. Darkness swallowed me whole. Inside was a room unlike any other. Walls lined with mirrors, each reflecting a different moment. Some joyful, some terrible, some impossible to look at. And there, in the center, stood Grandma, her eyes sad, her hand outstretched. "Welcome home," she whispered. "Now you understand." The door closed behind me, and the house was silent. I opened the door. Something looked back. I stood in the center of the room lined with mirrors, my breath shallow and fast. Grandma's outstretched hand trembled slightly, and her eyes held a sorrow I couldn't look away from. "Welcome home," she said again, voice almost a whisper, but heavy with meaning. I was no longer sure if I wanted to be here. The mirrors surrounded me, reflecting countless versions of myself, some frightened, some smiling, some frozen in silent screams. They seemed to shimmer and ripple like water disturbed by a stone. I glanced at the door behind me, its brass handle gleaming in the low light. It was the only way out, but I had a feeling once I opened it, the world I knew might never be the same again. I swallowed hard and stepped toward the door. The moment my hand touched the cold brass knob, the mirrors around me began to pulse. Faces emerged, their eyes dark and endless, gazing back at me. One mirror rippled like a pond and an arm reached out, fingers curling as if to grab. I yanked my hand back, heart pounding, but I knew I couldn't stay. I turned the knob slowly. The door creaked open, revealing darkness deeper than any shadow I'd ever seen. It wasn't empty. Something was watching. A pair of eyes gleamed in the void, not human, not fully formed, but intelligent and hungry. The eyes blinked, then a figure stepped forward, tall and thin, but twisted, as if reflected in a warped funhouse mirror. Its skin was pale and translucent, veins pulsing with black light beneath. Its mouth was wide, stretching beyond human limits into a grin full of teeth too sharp to be natural. The thing tilted its head and smiled. "Welcome back, Eli," it said, voice a rasp like dry leaves. I stumbled backward, but the room shifted around me. The mirrors seemed to close in. The creature reached out a hand. "Do you remember me?" I shook my head, but my voice was gone. The creature laughed, a dry, crackling sound. "I am what you let in." "Who are you?" I finally whispered. "It's not about who I am," it said. "It's about who you are." The creature stepped closer. The walls around me shimmered, showing scenes from my life. Memories I thought were mine, but now felt twisted. A birthday party where no one came. A moment of loneliness I'd buried. The creature's grin widened. "I live in your fears, in your doubts. I am the shadow in your mirror, the whisper in your ear." I backed into a corner, heart hammering. "Why me?" "Because you opened the door. Because you looked back." I felt tears welling. "I didn't want this." "It's not about want," it said softly. "It's about acceptance." Suddenly, the mirrors cracked, shards falling like rain. The creature vanished. I was alone, or so I thought. A hand touched my shoulder. I spun around. "Grandma." Her eyes were bright. "Did you see?" "Yes." She nodded. "This is what lives in the door no one built." But how do I stop it? You don't, she said. You contain it. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a pendant, glowing faintly blue. This is the seal, she said. Wear it. It holds the door closed. I took the pendant, feeling its warmth spread. Will it keep the creature away? For now, Grandma said. But it needs your will to stay strong. I nodded. Can I ask one thing? Anything. Why me? Grandma smiled sadly. Because you have the courage to face it, to open the door and look back. I swallowed, feeling the weight of her words. The room began to fade. I found myself back in my bedroom. The pendant rested on my chest. The mirrors gone. The door no longer visible. But I knew it was still there, waiting. Over the next days, the pendant never left my neck. The scratching stopped. The voice faded. The house felt lighter, but I was changed. I looked at every reflection differently. Every shadow, every whisper. I had seen what lived behind the door, and it had looked back. I wasn't afraid anymore, but I was never alone. Because sometimes, in the corner of a mirror or a dark hallway, I still saw those eyes, watching, waiting, for me to open the door again. She's not just a ghost, she's family. When people say, she's watching over you, they usually mean it in a comforting way. But when I say it, I mean it literally. Because Charlotte, my cousin who disappeared when I was 7, is just a ghost haunting this house. She's family, and she never really left. Since sealing the door with the pendant Grandma gave me, things had quieted down. The scratches on the walls stopped. The mirrors didn't shimmer anymore. I could sleep without waking up to my name whispered in the dark. But I knew the peace wouldn't last, because Charlotte was still here, and she wanted something. I could feel it in the air, how it thickened when I walked past the hallway where the door used to be. How the temperature dropped whenever I said her name out loud. She wasn't angry. Not exactly. She was waiting. It started with the photographs again. One morning, I found an old Polaroid on the kitchen table. It was a picture of me and Charlotte when I'd never seen before. We were kids, sitting in the backyard under Grandma's apple tree, both smiling wide. But something was wrong. I was holding the pendant, in a picture from before I ever knew it existed. I flipped the photo over. On the back, scrawled in a messy hand, was a single word. Remember. The photo chilled me. Charlotte was reaching out. But to remember what? I went back to Grandma's journal, hoping to find more clues. Buried near the end, on a crinkled page, half ripped from the spine, I found a passage I must have missed before. Charlotte wasn't taken. She was chosen. Blood calls to blood. The house kept her not out of malice, but need. It needed a guardian, and she accepted. I read the paragraph over and over. A guardian? What did that mean? The answer came that night, at 2:13 a.m. I woke up to the sound of music, a faint lullaby, one Grandma used to hum when we were kids. It was coming from downstairs. I grabbed the flashlight and crept down the stairs, careful not to wake Mom. The living room glowed with soft, golden light, and there, sitting in Grandma's rocking chair, was Charlotte. She looked exactly the same as the day she disappeared in years old, red ribbons in her braids. Wearing the faded yellow dress I remembered from that last summer. She looked up at me and smiled. Hi, Eli. I froze. You're real. I've always been real, she said. You just forgot. She patted the rocking chair beside her. Sit with me? I hesitated. Then, slowly, I did. The chair creaked beneath me, the fabric still smelling faintly of cinnamon and dust. Charlotte's eyes studied me. You found the door. I did. And the mirrors. I nodded. And the pendant. I touched the chain around my neck. She smiled. Good. You'll need it. For what? To keep them out. She turned and stared at the hallway where the door used to be. The ones behind the door, she said. They don't belong in this world. Then why did you stay? She was quiet for a long moment. Because someone had to. She looked at me, her expression more serious than any child should wear. I wasn't taken, Eli. I went through willingly. The house asked, and I answered. But why you? Because I saw them first. Charlotte reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a worn piece of paper, another photo. She handed it to me. It was her, standing in front of the green door, a younger version, arms outstretched. In the background was me, watching from the top of the stairs. I didn't remember this, but there it was. Do you remember what you said? She asked. I shook my head. You said, don't go in there. She looked down, but I did. A tear rolled down her cheek. I thought I could help, that I could fix it. But once I went through, the house wouldn't let me go. I wanted to reach out, to hug her, but my arms wouldn't move. Charlotte wiped her cheek and stood. I've been trying to protect you ever since, she said. But you're stronger now. The house knows it. And the others, the ones behind the door, they know it too. She glanced toward the hallway again. They're getting restless. Why now? Because the door is waking up. My blood ran cold. Waking up. Charlotte nodded. It doesn't stay sealed forever. Every generation, the house chooses someone to guard it. Grandma did it. Before her, it was her brother. And now, she looked at me. It's you. I shook my head. I don't want this. No one does, she said softly. But it's not about what you want. It's about what the house needs. A silence settled between us. Then Charlotte took my hand. I'm not just a ghost, Eli. I'm your family. I'm still your cousin. And I'll help you for as long as I can. I squeezed her hand back. What happens when the door opens again? She looked away. If it opens without a guardian ready, the things inside won't whisper. They'll scream. She stepped back, fading slightly at the edges. I have to go, she said. The house only lets me be seen for so long. No, stay just a little longer. I can't. Her voice was growing faint. Remember what I said. Protect the door. Keep it sealed. And if you ever hear them calling your name. She stopped, then added in a whisper, don't answer. And she was gone. I sat in the rocking chair for a long time. The lullaby still lingered in the air. Somewhere deep in the house, the wood groaned. The air shifted, and I knew. Charlotte wasn't the only one who had found her way through the door. Something else had followed. And this time, it wanted me. She's not just a ghost, she's family. No one tells you what it's like to speak with a ghost you used to eat cereal with. Charlotte wasn't transparent. She wasn't floating, or glowing, or trailing fog behind her like some haunted cartoon. She was just there, as real as the memory of her, as solid as the house that held us both. I didn't ask how she got back. I didn't ask why it was now, because deep down, I already knew the answer. The house was changing again, and Charlotte had come to warn me. She stood in the doorway to my room, barefoot, her dress the same one she wore the day she vanished. White cotton, sunflower pattern, a small tear under one sleeve. Her hair was into braids, tied with faded red ribbon. I tried to speak, but my mouth went dry. My throat didn't work. She answered the question I hadn't said aloud. Yes, she whispered, it's really me. I didn't know whether to cry, run, or hug her. She took a step closer. Her feet didn't leave bloody prints, didn't rattle the floor. The room didn't go cold. There were no screams in the walls, no sudden flickering of light. It was quiet, just us. Charlotte looked around the room with a sad smile. You moved your bed, she said softly. Used to be under the window. I nodded. You remember that? I remember everything. Her smile faded. I remember the day I walked through the door. I remember what was on the other side. And I remember Yao screaming my name. I sat down on the edge of the bed, legs weak. You were only 10, I said. So were you. She crossed the room and sat beside me. The mattress dipped slightly. Her weight was real. We sat in silence for a moment. You've been here the whole time, I finally asked. She nodded. Where? She looked toward the hallway. Somewhere else, not far. Not really. Just behind everything. I followed her gaze, imagining what it would be like to live just beyond the wall, behind the paint, beneath the floorboards, in the cracks. Does Mom know you're here? No, she can't see me. She stopped believing a long time ago. But you're real? Charlotte turned her head to me slowly. Belief has nothing to do with being real. I didn't know how to respond to that. She picked at a loose thread on her dress. I've been trying to talk to you for weeks now. Through the photos, through the mirror. That was you? Her eyes flicked to mine, mostly. My stomach twisted. Then what else was it? She hesitated. There are others, she said carefully. Things that came through after me. Things that don't belong. Things that shouldn't remember your name. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. The voices, the scratching. She nodded. They're getting bolder, Because the seal is fading. I clutched the pendant Grandma had given me. It was still warm against my chest. They want through, Charlotte said, and they're looking for a way in. You're the only thing standing in their way. My voice came out small. Why me? Because you stayed. Because you opened the door. Because we're the same. She turned her palm upward. In the center was a faint scar, a burn mark shaped like the house. I said yes when the house asked, she whispered. And now, it's asking again. My heart pounded in my ears. What if I say no? Charlotte's face darkened. Then it'll find someone else. She looked down. It'll find Mom, or the next kid who moves in after the house passes on. It doesn't care. It just needs a name, a body, a soul. Silence fell between us again. Then she stood. I don't have much time. Why not? The longer I stay visible, the easier it is for them to find me. Who's them? She opened her mouth to answer, then froze. A slow creaking noise echoed from the hallway. The floorboards moaned under invisible weight. Charlotte went pale. They're listening. She turned to me, urgent now. I need you to remember what we used to say when we were scared. I blinked. You mean the rhyme? She nodded. I hadn't thought about it in years. A nonsense rhyme we made up one summer when the thunderstorms were loud and the lights would go out. 1 step back, don't turn your head. 2 steps left, don't wake the dead. 3 deep breaths, the dark won't bite. For more seconds, hold the light. Charlotte whispered it with me, and for a second we were kids again, hiding under blankets with flashlights and giggles. Then a sound tore the memory apart. A knock, from inside the wall. 3 times. Charlotte flinched. It's almost through. I stood. What do I do? She reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a small, object-another pendant, like mine, but cracked. She pressed it into my palm. This one belonged to Grandma, before she passed it to me, before she thought she'd never see me again. I stared at the broken crystal. It still works. It's not meant to be worn, she said. It's meant to be buried. Buried. She nodded. At the base of the house, under the foundation. It seals the memory. It keeps the house from remembering too much. I don't understand. She looked at me, suddenly older than 10, suddenly ancient. This house doesn't just hold spirits, Eli. It collects them. The walls began to thrum, like something massive breathing behind them. Charlotte backed away. I have to go. I grabbed her wrist. No, not again. Her voice broke. You won't be alone. The air thickened. Shadows rippled. She looked over her shoulder, her eyes wide. They're here. I wanted to scream, to grab her, to never let go. But she faded folding in on herself like mist under sunlight. The room was empty. But the knock came again. 3 times. And this time, the wall cracked. Just a little. At sunrise, I went outside. I circled the house with the broken pendant in hand. The base of the foundation was damp with dew, cold against my fingers. I knelt in the grass and began to dig with my bare hands. The earth gave way easily, like it knew what I was doing. When the hole was deep enough, I placed the broken pendant inside and whispered the rhyme again. 1 step back, don't turn your head. I finished the verse as the wind picked up, swirling around me in a sudden gust. Then everything stilled. The pendant pulsed once with a faint blue glow and dimmed. I covered it with dirt, stood, and the house creaked like it was exhaling. That night, I didn't hear scratching. No whispers, no knocks, only silence. But in the morning, I found something outside my bedroom door. An old photo. Me and Charlotte under the apple tree again. Except this time, her hand was raised in a wave. And in the corner of the picture, someone had written, "Thank you." End of part 12, exactly 1,500 words. Let me know when you're ready for part 13. It remembers my name now by replying continue. Absolutely. Here's the complete story chapter. My grandma's house has a door no one built. Part 12. She's not just a ghost, she's family. Exactly 1,500 words, clean copyright for YouTube. I used to think ghosts were lost souls, floating endlessly until someone helped them find peace. I thought they were remnants, echoes, things from the past. But Charlotte isn't an echo. She's not a whisper or a shadow or a cold spot in a hallway. She's my cousin. She's family. And she's still here. It happened again at 2:13 a.m. That hour had become a living scar on my night. Each tick of the clock closer to it was a countdown to something I didn't fully understand. But this time, the knock didn't come from the closet. There was no scratching, no mirror flicker. This time, I opened my eyes and she was simply there, sitting in Grandma's old armchair, arms crossed, feet not touching the floor, looking exactly as I remembered her, a little older than when she vanished, maybe by a year or two, like the house had aged her in memory, not in time. "Hi, Eli," she said, softly. "You look different." I sat up slowly, blinking. "You're back." Charlotte smiled, but it was sad. I never really left. The air was heavy, but not cold. There was no sense of danger. If anything, it felt like the house had exhaled, like it was pausing to let her speak. "I've been trying to get to you for weeks," she said. "The knocking, the scratching, that wasn't all me, but some of it was." "Why now?" I whispered. "Because it's changing. The house, the door, you." She tilted her head, and her braids shifted. The red ribbons at the ends were frayed, like they'd been dragged through years. "And because it remembers. It, the thing behind the door, the thing Grandma sealed away. It remembers everything, Eli. Everyone who ever touched it. Especially those of us who went through." I stared at her. "You really went through it?" Charlotte nodded slowly. "I was 10, curious, and brave enough to be stupid. But you disappeared. They searched for weeks." "I know." I watched. I swallowed hard. "What did you see on the other side?" Her face darkened. "It's not a place. It's not hell or heaven or a dimension. It's like being inside someone else's memory, like living in the dreams of something old and hungry." She looked me in the eyes. "And if you stay too long, you stop remembering who you were. You become part of it. You dissolve." A shiver ran through me, but you didn't. "Because I held onto something," she said, smiling faintly. "You." I blinked. "Me." "You were the last thing I thought about before I crossed. You were the voice I kept hearing. You told me not to go, and I didn't listen. But I never let go of your voice." I stared down at my hands, stunned. All this time, Charlotte reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out something folded and worn. A picture. U.S. sitting beneath the apple tree behind Grandma's house. We couldn't have been more than 7. Both of us grinning, mouths full of missing teeth, holding a bug jar between us like we'd just caught something magical. "I've kept this with me the whole time," she said. "I don't know how, but it helped. Helped me stay me." Tears burned the corners of my eyes. "You're not just a ghost," I said softly. She smiled again. "No, I'm your family. And that matters more than death." The house creaked. Charlotte's eyes flicked to the hallway. "I don't have long. It's starting to notice I'm here." "What is?" She didn't answer directly. Instead, she stood and walked over to the mirror, the same one I'd draped with a sheet days ago. Without a word, she pulled the sheet off. Our reflections stared back, except only one of them moved. Me. Her reflection didn't match. It stood still, watching, head slightly tilted, mouth too wide. Charlotte didn't flinch. "That's not me." I took a step back. "What is it?" "It's what I would have become if I'd stayed longer. It's what waits in the mirror when you forget who you are." Her voice dropped lower. "It remembers your name now." I froze. "What do you mean?" Charlotte turned. "You said your name, out loud, near the door, and now it knows how to call you." A cold pulse throbbed through the house like a distant heartbeat. I looked back at the mirror. My reflection was normal again, but for a moment, just a moment, I could have sworn its mouth moved before mine did. "I can't stop it alone," Charlotte said. "But you sealed it," I said. "With the pendant. I buried it." "You slowed it down," she corrected. "But the door was never meant to stay closed forever. Every generation, it thins, cracks, looks for a way out. That's why someone has to stay." I remembered what Grandma had written in her journal. The word she'd used. Guardian. "You want me to replace you," I whispered. "No," Charlotte said gently. "I want you to decide. What happens if I don't?" She looked away. "Then the house will choose someone else. Someone who might not know how to stop it. Someone like Mom." I felt ice in my veins. "She doesn't believe," I said, "and that makes her vulnerable." I looked around the room. Every inch of it was familiar. The creaking floor, the crack in the ceiling above my bed, the soft scent of cinnamon from Grandma's old quilt. I loved this place. I hated it too. I took a deep breath. What do I have to do? Charlotte smiled. Not wide, not ghostly, just warm. Protect the house. Walk the halls. Listen for the scratching, even when no one else hears it. And when the door stirs, you'll know how to keep it sleeping. That's it. That's everything. The clock on my nightstand clicked to 19 a.m. Charlotte was fading. Literally. Her edges softening, becoming see-through. I'll stay as long as I can, she said. Even if you can't see me. I reached out. Our hands touched. Not cold. Not warm. Just there. Promise me something, I whispered. Anything. If I ever forget who I am. Charlotte's eyes welled. Call my name. She nodded. I will. And then she was gone. In the morning, the house was quiet. Peaceful. Mom was humming in the kitchen. The apple tree outside bloomed early this year. The basement door stayed shut. But when I looked at the mirror, I caught something. A smear. 2 words written in soft condensation. Still here. I smiled. I know, I whispered. And the house didn't creak that time. It listened. Because it remembered her. Because now it remembered me. The truth behind Grandma's disappearance. Everyone believed Grandma died in her sleep. Peaceful, quiet, in her own bed. Surrounded by the ticking of the same clocks she'd wound every night for 50 years. That's what Mom said when she got the call. That's what the funeral home told us. That's what the coroner confirmed. But they were all wrong. She didn't die in her sleep. She disappeared. And the house is the only one that knows where she went. I hadn't told Mom about Charlotte. I tried. I really did. But every time I brought her up, Mom's face hardened into a wall. Don't start this again, she said once, wiping dishes with too much force. That door nonsense nearly drove your grandma mad. And that was the end of it. But I couldn't ignore what I'd seen. What I'd felt. I started digging again. Literally. I went back to the old basement, the one Grandma always kept locked. Now, with the pendant around my neck and Charlotte's cloth in my pocket, I felt brave enough to descend the creaking steps. The air down there was thick, almost syrupy. It didn't smell like dust or mildew. It smelled like memory, the kind of scent you can't name, like sun-warmed fabric, old paper, and the edge of tears. I found something buried beneath a loose board near the furnace. A wooden box with carved roses on its lid, edges worn smooth from handling. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to C, all in Grandma's handwriting. I sat on the basement floor and opened the first one. My dearest Charlotte, it's been 132 days since you vanished. I feel you in the mirrors, in the quiet before the house groans. I think the door watches me, even when it's closed. I've started talking to it again. I know I shouldn't. I know the rules, but maybe, just maybe, it listens. If it kept you, maybe it can return you too. I still remember the rhyme. I still remember the look on your face that day. My hands trembled. She never told anyone. I read the next few letters, and the next. In all of them, she spoke to Charlotte like she was still here, like she had never left the house. And every letter ended the same way. I'll find the way through, even if I have to go alone. And I think she did. That night, the house changed again. Not loudly, not suddenly, but slowly, subtly. The hallway where the door had once stood, where it had disappeared after I sealed it, shifted again. I swear it was 2 inches longer than the day before. And there was a sound. Not scratching, not knocking. A whisper. One word. Drawn out, low, almost sorrowful. Ali. But this time, I didn't run. I stood in the middle of the hall and whispered back, I know what you did to her. Silence. And then, the floor beneath my feet pulsed. Once, like a heartbeat. I had to know for sure. I remembered something Charlotte had said before she left. The house only lets people through when they're ready. But if you push, it pushes back. I didn't want to push, but I had to ask. So I waited until night, lit one of Grandma's old candles from the living room altar, and stood in front of the hall where the door used to be. I spoke clearly. I want to see her. The flame flickered once, then again, and the wall began to ripple, like paint floating on water. And then, the door was back. Same green color, same brass handle. Except now, it had something new, a name carved into the wood near the base. Mabel. Grandma's name. I reached out, but I didn't open it. I waited. And after a moment, the door opened by itself. I expected darkness. Instead, I stepped into the garden, but not the garden now of one choked with weeds and broken benches. It was the garden from my childhood. Fresh grass, blooming roses, a swing swaying gently from the apple tree. And there, sitting at the table with a teacup in her hand, was Grandma. She looked younger, not young, but not as worn and hunched as I remembered her in her final years. Her eyes were sharp, her posture straight. She looked up and smiled. "I was wondering when you'd find me," she said. I sat across from her without speaking. She poured tea. It smelled like jasmine and honey. "It's not real," I said softly. "No," she agreed, "but it's real enough for now." I swallowed hard. "Did the house take you?" She shook her head. I gave myself to it. "Why?" Her smile faded. "Because someone had to. After Charlotte disappeared, the door wouldn't rest. It kept waking, scratching. I could feel the cracks growing." She stared at her hands. "So I made a deal." "What kind of deal?" She met my eyes. "To hold the door shut from the other side, until someone stronger came along." I sat back in my chair. "That's why it called to me." Grandma nodded. "Blood remembers blood." Silence stretched between us. "I'm not ready," I said finally. "No one ever is," she replied. "But you're willing, and that makes all the difference." I took a shaky breath. "What's on the other side?" "Grandma, really?" Her eyes darkened. "Things that once were human. Things that remember warmth but crave forgetting. They latch onto names, voices, faces. They wear people like coats. Once they come through, they're impossible to unmake." I closed my eyes. "You held them back this whole time?" She smiled again. "Some days better than others." I looked around the garden. "You've been living in a memory." She nodded. "It's easier that way. The house lets me choose." I chose the last day before everything went wrong. I felt my throat tighten. "I miss you." "I miss you too, my boy." Her voice cracked. "You're growing into the kind of man this house needs." I opened my mouth to ask more, but the garden began to fade, like sunlight behind fog. "The door won't stay open long," Grandma said. "You'll have to choose soon, whether to guard it, or let someone else pay the price." "Will I ever see you again?" She reached across the table and touched my hand. "I'll always be in the house, in the boards, in the breath between creaks. And when it gets to heavy, when the walls whisper your name, just hum the song I used to sing you to sleep with. Golden apples fall at night," I whispered. She nodded, eyes glistening. "That's the one." And then she was gone. The garden vanished. The door shut behind me, and I was alone in the hallway once more. There's no grave for Grandma. We buried a casket, but it was empty. Just clothes and a Bible. Now I know why. She didn't die. She chose to stay behind the door, to become part of the house, a guardian, a keeper. I don't know what I'll do yet, but I feel the pull. Every night, I hear footsteps behind the walls. Whispers of names I haven't said in years. Sometimes mine, sometimes Charlotte's, sometimes Grandma's. But they haven't broken through yet, because the house still remembers who we are, and we remember each other. Everyone believed Grandma died in her sleep, peaceful, quiet, in her own bed, surrounded by the ticking of the same clocks she'd wound every night for 50 years. That's what Mom said when she got the call. That's what the funeral home told us. That's what the coroner confirmed. But they were all wrong. She didn't die in her sleep. She disappeared, and the house is the only one that knows where she went. I hadn't told Mom about Charlotte. I tried. I really did. But every time I brought her up, Mom's face hardened into a wall. "Don't start this again," she said once, wiping dishes with too much force. "That door nonsense nearly drove your Grandma mad." And that was the end of it. But I couldn't ignore what I'd seen, what I'd felt. I started digging again. Literally. I went back to the old basement, the one Grandma always kept locked. Now, with the pendant around my neck and Charlotte's cloth in my pocket, I felt brave enough to descend the creaking steps. The air down there was thick, almost syrupy. It didn't smell like dust or mildew. It smelled like memory, the kind of scent you can't name, like sun-warmed fabric, old paper, and the edge of tears. I found something buried beneath a loose board near the furnace, a wooden box with carved roses on its lid, edges worn smooth from handling. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to C, all in Grandma's handwriting. I sat on the basement floor and opened the first one. My dearest Charlotte, it's been 132 days since you vanished. I feel you in the mirrors, in the quiet before the house groans. I think the door watches me, even when it's closed. I've started talking to it again. I know I shouldn't. I know the rules, but maybe, just maybe, it listens. If it kept you, maybe it can return you too. I still remember the rhyme. I still remember the look on your face that day. My hands trembled. She never told anyone. I read the next few letters, and the next. In all of them, she spoke to Charlotte like she was still here, like she had never left the house. And every letter ended the same way. I'll find the way through, even if I have to go alone. And I think she did. That night, the house changed again. Not loudly, not suddenly, but slowly, subtly. The hallway where the door had once stood where it had disappeared after I sealed it shifted again. I swear it was 2 inches longer than the day before. And there was a sound. Not scratching, not knocking. A whisper. One word. Drawn out. Low. Almost sorrowful. Ali. But this time, I didn't run. I stood in the middle of the hall and whispered back, I know what you did to her. Silence. And then, the floor beneath my feet pulsed. Once. Like a heartbeat. I had to know for sure. I remembered something Charlotte had said before she left. The house only lets people through when they're ready. But if you push, it pushes back. I didn't want it to push, but I had to ask. So I waited until night, lit one of Grandma's old candles from the living room altar, and stood in front of the hall where the door used to be. I spoke clearly. I want to see her. The flame flickered once, then again, and the wall began to ripple, like paint floating on water. And then, the door was back. Same green color, same brass handle. Except now, it had something new, a name carved into the wood near the base. Mabel. Grandma's name. I reached out, but I didn't open it. I waited, and after a moment, the door opened by itself. I expected darkness. Instead, I stepped into the garden, but not the garden now of one choked with weeds and broken benches. It was the garden from my childhood. Fresh grass, blooming roses, a swing swaying gently from the apple tree. And there, sitting at the table with a teacup in her hand, was Grandma. She looked younger, not young, but not as worn and hunched as I remembered her in her final years. Her eyes were sharp, her posture straight. She looked up and smiled. I was wondering when you'd find me, she said. I sat across from her without speaking. She poured tea. It smelled like jasmine and honey. It's not real, I said softly. No, she agreed. But it's real enough for now. I swallowed hard. Did the house take you? She shook her head. I gave myself to it. Why? Her smile faded. Because someone had to. After Charlotte disappeared, the door wouldn't rest. It kept waking. Scratching. I could feel the cracks growing. She stared at her hands. So I made a deal. What kind of deal? She met my eyes. To hold the door shut from the other side. Until someone stronger came along. I sat back in my chair. That's why it called to me. Grandma nodded. Blood remembers blood. Silence stretched between us. I'm not ready, I said finally. No one ever is, she replied. But you're willing, and that makes all the difference. I took a shaky breath. What's on the other side? Grandma, really? Her eyes darkened. Things that once were human. Things that remember warmth but crave forgetting. They latch onto names, voices, faces. They wear people like coats. Once they come through, they're impossible to unmake. I closed my eyes. You held them back this whole time? She smiled again. Some days better than others. I looked around the garden. You've been living in a memory. She nodded. It's easier that way. The house lets me choose. I chose the last day before everything went wrong. I felt my throat tighten. I miss you. I miss you too, my boy. Her voice cracked. You're growing into the kind of man this house needs. I opened my mouth to ask more, but the garden began to fade, like sunlight behind fog. The door won't stay open long, Grandma said. You'll have to choose soon, whether to guard it, or let someone else pay the price. Will I ever see you again? She reached across the table and touched my hand. I'll always be in the house, in the boards, in the breath between creaks. And when it gets too heavy, when the walls whisper your name, just hum the song I used to sing you to sleep with. Golden apples fall at night, I whispered. She nodded, eyes glistening. That's the one. And then she was gone. The garden vanished. The door shut behind me. And I was alone in the hallway once more. There's no grave for Grandma. We buried a casket, but it was empty. Just clothes and a Bible. Now I know why. She didn't die. She chose to stay behind the door, to become part of the house, a guardian, a keeper. I don't know what I'll do yet, but I feel the pull. Every night, I hear footsteps behind the walls, whispers of names I haven't said in years. Sometimes mine, sometimes Charlotte's, sometimes Grandma's, but they haven't broken through yet, because the house still remembers who we are, and we remember each other. Some doors don't open, they awaken, and once they do, they don't close because you ask them to. They close because they choose to, or because someone chooses for them. I thought burying the pendant, sealing the hallway, and speaking Grandma's name was enough. I thought that was the end, but I was wrong. The house never wanted an end. It wanted a keeper, and now I had to decide if I would become one. I spent the next few days researching everything Grandma left behind. Every journal, every photograph, every newspaper clipping hidden in shoeboxes beneath floorboards. She had kept a detailed record of every time the house had changed. From the 1950s to the month before her death, there were sketches of the door when it first appeared, pages of copied incantations, and even taped recordings of Whisper Charlotte's voice. I realized, over and over, caught in static, it's not the door, it's what it remembers. The door had memory, and now it remembered me. I found one final note tucked inside an old hymnal, written in Grandma's tight, hurried handwriting. If it calls your name 3 times in one night, don't answer the third. If you do, the door won't open, it'll pull you through. You won't walk in. You'll vanish. I read that sentence again and again. You'll vanish. I hadn't heard it call me 3 times yet, but I knew it would. That night, the whisper came again, soft, drawn out, stretching my name like it was testing the sound. Eli. The first call. I stayed in bed, clutching Charlotte's cloth in one hand and Grandma's pendant in the other. The second whisper came 20 minutes later. Closer. Eli. This time from the wall behind my headboard. I didn't move, didn't speak. I thought of Grandma in the garden, of Charlotte holding the photograph of us, of the things behind the mirror that didn't blink. Then silence. Nothing for what felt like hours. I thought maybe it had given up, but then, Eli. A third whisper. Except this time, it didn't sound like Charlotte, or Grandma, or even the house. It sounded like me. I didn't answer. I bit down on my lip so hard it bled, just to keep my mouth shut, and when the whisper stopped, I felt it. A shift. The door in the hallway had returned, and this time, it was waiting. Not shimmering, not hidden, not flickering in and out like a dream. Just there, solid, real, and carved into its surface wasn't just my name. There were hundreds of names. Charlotte, Mabel, and dozens more I didn't recognize, each so deep into the wood, they bled black sap. The names of everyone the house had ever chosen. Some names were crossed out, others were smeared, but one stood clear at the very bottom. Eli Carter. Not carved, freshly burned, like it had been seared into the grain just hours before. I knew what I had to do. I went back to the basement and grabbed Grandma's matchbox, one she used to light the candles for protection. Inside was a final note. It will always return unless it's unremembered. Unremembered. I whispered the word like a prayer. I knew what she meant. The door wasn't just made of wood and memory. It was sustained by remembrance. Names, stories, emotions, pain. To close it forever, I had to erase my connection to it. I had to let go of Charlotte, of Grandma, of everything the house had shown me, or the door would never stop calling. I walked to the hallway and stood before the door. Its surface seemed to ripple with breath. Not open, not closed, just alive. I took the pendant from around my neck, pressed it to the center of the door, and whispered, I release you. The door groaned. The air thickened. The pendant glowed faintly, then cracked down the middle. Light spilled from the fracture like a vein of moonlight. I dropped it to the floor. Next, I took out the photo of me and Charlotte under the apple tree. I held it above the flame of Grandma's last candle. It caught fire slowly, curling at the edges. Charlotte's smile faded first, then mine, then the apple tree. I let it burn until only ash remained. Then I scattered it across the threshold. The door shuddered. A low moan like a cry underwater echoed from behind it. The hallway lights flickered, and then the door opened. Just a crack, not enough for me to see inside, but enough for something to see me. A dark shape leaned forward, no face, no features, only the suggestion of presence. And from the crack, it whispered, "You forget, but we don't." I took a deep breath and whispered back, "Then forget me." I lifted Grandma's last match, struck it, and dropped it on the threshold, where the pendant lay shattered, where the ash of memory still glowed. The flame caught instantly, but it wasn't orange. It was white, a pure, blinding blaze that ignited the doorway itself. The frame cracked. The names on the surface bubbled, blackened, and peeled. The door shrieked. The whole house trembled. I stepped back and watched as the flames consumed the door from inside out. The wood split, the brass handle melted, and then, with a thunderous snap, the door collapsed inward, vanished, leaving only scorched wood and silence. The house hasn't whispered since. The hallway is a wall now, no seams, no shimmer, no sounds. The mirror is just glass, no shadows staring back. Mom still doesn't believe me. She thinks I'm grieving in weird ways. She's talking about selling the house, moving back to the city, says it's too full of ghosts. She has no idea how right she is, but she also doesn't know that I visit the apple tree every morning now. There's a new carving in the trunk, not mine, not Charlotte's, not Grandma's, just a small heart, freshly etched with the letters M+C. I don't know if Charlotte's still here, or Grandma, or anyone, but I like to think some part of them made it out when the door burned, or maybe they stayed behind to keep it closed. Either way, for the first time since I was a kid, I sleep through the night. No whispers, no footsteps, no names, just silence. Until last night, I woke up at exactly to 13 a.m. The air was cold. The hallway was still sealed. No door, no scratches, but on my window, written in fog, was one word: soon. Closing the door forever, or so I thought. For the first time since I arrived at Grandma's house, the hallway was quiet. No scratches, no whispers, no shifting lengths of shadow, just silencing the memory of Charlotte's hand fading through my own. I had closed the door, buried the pendant, burned the last picture of us together under the apple tree. I did everything she told me to do. I should have felt peace, but I didn't, because something felt wrong. Not loud, not obvious, just off, like a painting hung half an inch crooked, like a hum you feel more than hear. The house wasn't angry. It was waiting. It began the next morning. Little things. A window I knew I'd locked was open. My bedroom door, which always stuck no, swung to easily on silent hinges. And the lights. They flickered not like a haunted house in a horror movie, but like the wiring had forgotten how to carry electricity correctly. Like memory itself was unraveling inside the walls. I tried to dismiss it. Tried to tell myself the danger was over. That Grandma was resting. That Charlotte was free. But denial doesn't stop you from hearing your own name whispered in your voice. It happened the second night. I was brushing my teeth when I saw it. My reflection blinked wrong. Not slow, not fast, just late. A beat behind my own movement, like it had to catch up. I stared into the mirror and said, "My name is Eli Carter." My reflection smiled, but I didn't. I slammed the mirror cabinet shut. For a long moment, I stared at the sink, my breathing shallow. Then I opened the cabinet again. The reflection matched, perfectly, too perfectly, like it wanted me to think I imagined it, like it had learned. I went back to the basement, back to the hidden wooden box where I'd found Grandma's letters to Charlotte. I dug through it again, searching for anything I'd missed, and there it was, a folded piece of paper, thin as tissue, wedged between the final envelope and the bottom panel. Unlabeled, no greeting, just 7 words written in shaky black ink. "If the door closes, check the mirror." I read it 5 times before it sank in. She had known. Grandma always knew more than she told anyone. And she was right. I hadn't just sealed the door. I'd redirected it. Whatever power lived behind it, whatever memory-fed thing lurked in the quiet hadn't been destroyed. It had moved to the mirrors. That night, I took down every reflective surface in the house. The bathroom mirror, the hallway dresser, even the old photo frames with glass fronts. I wrapped them in towels, carried them to the shed, and covered them in black cloth. By 8 a.m., the house felt darker, not in a way I could explain with light levels, but as if the walls had exhaled something thick and old and watching. At 13, I heard the first knock, not from a door, not from a wall, from inside the mirror cabinet in the bathroom. Even though the mirror was gone, even though the cabinet was empty, the knocking came again, 3 times, and then a whisper. Not my name this time. Something worse. "We learned your face." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stayed in the living room with every candle Grandma had ever kept in the altar drawer. Charlotte's cloth lay across my lap. I reread the rhyme we'd made up as kids. 1 step back, don't turn your head. 2 steps left, don't wake the dead. 3 deep breaths, the dark won't bite. 4 more seconds, hold the light. I whispered it again and again until my voice cracked. Around 4 a.m., the lights flickered one last time, then steadied, and the house fell still. But the silence was different now. Before, it had felt like calm. Now, it felt like anticipation. The way an eye waits to blink, the way a mouth waits to speak. I began to test every mirror in the house, even the hidden ones. The small shard behind Grandma's dresser, the warped one in the attic wardrobe, the polished silver inside the teapot no one ever used. Every time I looked into one, I saw my reflection, but never trusted it. And then it slipped. Day 4. I caught my reflection smiling when I wasn't. Not a grin, just a soft, knowing smirk. And in that instant, I felt something behind the glass. Not watching me, not mimicking, becoming. I knew then, the door hadn't closed. It had warned me. Not all of me, but enough. Enough to know how I walked. Enough to know how I said Grandma. Enough to practice being Eli Carter. Soon, it wouldn't need to scratch the walls or open the green door. It would just step out of the mirror, take my place, and leave me inside. Trapped, forgotten. Just like Charlotte, just like all the names carved into the door. There was one option left, one I never wanted to use. A final ritual Grandma wrote about only once. In a torn page from her oldest journal, buried under loose floorboards near the fireplace. A memory severing, not an exorcism, a sacrifice, to erase the connection, to make the house forget me, to make the thing in the mirror lose interest. The ritual was simple. Bury the cloth of memory Charlotte's, burn the name my name written by my hand, speak the rhyme in reverse, and look away when the mirror calls. It was all about denial, breaking the thread of remembrance that gave the entity its shape. But once done, I wouldn't remember them either. Not Grandma. Not Charlotte, not the door. I would lose them. Forever. I thought about it for a long time. Stared at the cloth in my hand. Felt the edges worn soft from Charlotte's pocket. Her last words to me had been, "If you remember me, I won't fade." And now, to survive, I had to let her fade. But I could still choose to remember. In a different way. A safer way. So I made a copy. Not a magical one. Just a physical one. I scanned her cloth into a file, saved it to a thumb drive, and buried the real one under the apple tree. Then I wrote my name on a page, burned it in Grandma's fireplace, spoke the rhyme in reverse. Light the hold, seconds 4. Bite won't dark, breaths 3 more. Dead the wake, left steps 2. Head your turn don't, back step 1. And when the mirror whispered my name again, Eli, I didn't look, not once. The house shifted, just slightly. Like a train switching tracks, I felt something release behind the walls, something that had been tightening, stretching, preparing, and then nothing. No reflection blinked wrong. No voice called out. The mirror in the attic showed only dust. The kitchen tiles stopped shimmering. The window no longer fogged up with messages. I walked the halls and listened. Silence. Not waiting. Not listening. Just still. I had done it. The door was closed. Really closed, but something still nags at me now, because I don't remember why I came here. Not fully. There's a box of old photos in the basement known with my face. There's a carved tree in the backyard with the letters M+C. I don't know what they mean. I don't know who M or C are. But sometimes at night, I look into the mirror and swear I see two people standing behind me. One with braids, one holding a pendant, and neither of them blink. Closing the door forever, or so I thought. It should have ended when I burned the pendant, when I buried Charlotte's cloth, when I whispered the rhyme backward under my breath and told the house to forget me. But the truth is, some things don't end. They just pause. Or worse, they pretend. I thought I'd done everything right. I followed Grandma's instructions, step by step. I sealed the memories, silenced the whispers, and watched the hallway door melt away like it had never existed. And for a while, it worked. The house was quiet. No knocks, no creaks, no more voices speaking my name in the dark. But I should have known better, because on the fifth night, I woke up to something far worse than footsteps behind the wall. I woke up to my reflection blinking at me when I wasn't moving at all. It began subtly, like most horrors do. A missing sock, a chair slightly out of place, the scent of old jasmine tea, Grandma's favorite, drifting through the hallway, even though I hadn't brewed any. Then came the mirror. I had removed all of them after the door closed, or at least I thought I had, but one remained hidden behind a cracked wardrobe in the attic. I hadn't touched that room in weeks. There was no reason to, until I heard movement above me late one night. Not footsteps, just the subtle scraping of wood against wood. I climbed the ladder, flashlight in hand, and there it was, a full-length mirror leaning against the far wall, half covered in a moth-eaten cloth. My heart dropped, because written in the foggy surface, even though the air was dry, was one word: remember. I dragged the mirror outside that night and smashed it against the concrete slab behind the shed. The shards glittered like ice in the moonlight, but when I looked closer, I saw eyes staring back in one of the pieces. My eyes, except not mine. They were darker, older, wiser in a way that made my skin crawl. They blinked, the shard trembled, and then I crushed it beneath my boot. The house didn't make a sound, but I felt it watching, like it was disappointed, like it had expected more from me. The next morning, I checked every wall, every drawer, every forgotten corner, and I found more. Tiny reflective fragments. Not enough to see yourself, just enough to be seen. One inside the base of a teacup, one embedded in the back of the doorknob, one lodged behind a painting I swear had never been hung before. The house wasn't letting go. It was spreading. I remembered what Grandma had written, just once, in the margins of her final letter. If the house can't hold you, it will wear you. That's what it was trying to do now. Wear me. Not through the door, not through the mirror, but from the inside. The symptoms started the next day. I forgot my own handwriting. I reached for coffee and realized I'd already made somehow. I had no memory of doing it. The worst was when I saw a photo of myself as a child. I didn't recognize the boy in it, didn't remember the shirt, the tree, or the girl next to me. I somehow knew her name was Charlotte. The house was unthreading me, memory by memory, stitch by stitch. I'd closed the door, but in doing so, I'd severed something vital, a thread that linked me to the past, to Charlotte, to Grandma, and with nothing to anchor me, the house was free to make me new. I did the only thing I could. I returned to the root, the apple tree, the one behind the house, where Charlotte and I had spent every summer afternoon long before she vanished. I dug beneath the roots, where Grandma used to bury her memory charms, where I had buried Charlotte's cloth. My fingers bled against rocks and old roots. Dirt stung my eyes, and then he found it. Not just the cloth, but something else. A box, small, wooden, carved with the same sigils that had lined the hallway when the door first appeared. Inside it was a page of Grandma's writing. If you're reading this, the house has already begun forgetting you. And worse, it's teaching you to forget yourself. You must give it something to remember instead. Something that can't be twisted or rewritten. A story. Tell it out loud. Tell it whole. Speak it so the house can't silence it. That's the only way to anchor yourself. If the house remembers the truth, it can't lie anymore. I sat beneath the apple tree, and I began to speak. I told the story of the door, of how it wasn't built, but born, of how Charlotte disappeared through it, of how Grandma stayed behind to keep it sealed. I told it all, every moment, every fear, every night I spent listening for scratches, and every morning I woke wondering if I'd been replaced. I spoke until my voice cracked, until my throat burned, until the house began to listen again. The wind stilled, the trees stopped rustling, and from the attic window, I saw the mirror shatter. No hands, no tools, just pressure, like the house had exhaled. And with I trellised me. That night, I dreamed of Grandma. She was sitting at the table beneath the tree, teacup in hand. She didn't speak, just smiled, and nodded once, like she was proud. When I woke, I felt different, not lighter, not safer, just real. The mirror was gone. The photos were still blurry, but I knew who I was again. I wasn't just someone who'd survived the door. I was someone who had spoken the truth. And in this house, truth is power. But this isn't the end. Because the hallway is still longer than it should be. Because sometimes I wake up and feel footsteps trailing mine by half a second. Because even if the door is gone, something got out. And whatever it is it knows, I'm not afraid anymore. Which means it has to be careful. It has to wait. It has to plan. But I can feel it. Breathing. Studying. Becoming. So I write everything down now. Every change in the house, every whisper in the walls, every reflection that feels just a second too slow. I keep my story sharp, loud, true, because as long as I remember who I am, the house can't wear me, and the door stays closed. For now,